This video is going to show you solo Grandmaster Nightfall whilst using the Stasis fusion rifle, Riptide, whilst using a Stasis build to accompany that weapon. So the whole idea of the run, first and foremost, was to run a Grandmaster Nightfall with this fusion rifle without barrier. So you can see I haven't got barrier rounds, I've just got unstoppable. Obviously it's barrier and unstoppable for this week. So yeah, that was the whole idea of to sort of do it with the Stasis fusion Riptide. But whilst also showcasing as I say, a Stasis build to accompany that, which I've just showed you at the start, which I can briefly talk about the fragments and aspects, right? So this build is quite complex and really good once you get going with it, right? So first and foremost, aspects. You must have Bleak, the Bleak Watcher aspect on. That gives you the turret you can see before you, right? Stunning this champ, or freezing this champ. Then you want the harvest, glacial harvest aspect. That gives you shards. So you can see the shards in front of me that you pick them up, right? And you can do some build crafting with those elemental shards. Fragment wise, we've got Whisper of Refraction on. So this gives us heal and rift energy when we defeat frozen targets, which is all the time. So it's a top tier pick, this fragment, I think, for this build. And we've got Whisper of Durance on. Now this is critical. This means that your turret will last longer than normal. Alright, I don't know how much longer, but it'll last longer. It's well worth putting on. So Whisper of Durance, and then we've also got Whisper of Torment. So you gain great energy, you gain great energy when you take damage, which is all the time in Grandmasters, especially solo wise. All the fire is coming towards you. So it's a top tier fragment also. And then Whisper of Shards, right? Whisper of Shards just for the plus 10 resilience, and you get even more grenade energy, right? When you're destroying crystals and stuff like that, frozen targets. So that's that, but then we've got some mods on top of that to synergize with the fragments and stuff. We have elemental shards, elemental charge. So elemental shards is a very unique mod. It's Stasis. It turns elemental shards to be counted as an elemental well, as a Stasis well. So then, right, then you can put Font of Wisdom on, which gives you increased intellect. Font of Wisdom's a fantastic mod, so you can get supers up, like right now I'm getting plenty of supers, which this super's good in Grandmasters, we know this. Not as good as it used to be. Doesn't do as much damage as it used to and stuff. It's alright. It's alright. It's not too bad. And then Font of Might. Font of Might stacks with other buffs. Font of Might is unique that way. And we have a Stasis weapon on, so when we pick up a Stasis well, we will then get an increase to damage for our Riptide fusion. Not only that, we have elemental charge on, so when we pick up an elemental shard, which is an elemental well, you'll then get a 20% damage bonus for your weapon. So we can basically get high energy fire, Font of Might whenever we want to get it. It's such a good thing, this build. If there's nothing good next season barrier wise and you're struggling, come to this. This build's going to be really, really good, especially next season when solar is less good than it is now. It is good. It's still going to be good next season, solar, but not as good because of class restoration. Let's be honest. It's just not going to be as good. But obviously, that was just something to incentivize you to play solar, the Solar 3.0 this season. That's all that mod was for. If that was here the whole time, then it wouldn't be a good thing for the game. So you've got to make things work, right? Now I'm somebody, I will admit I'm not one of the best players in the world, but I am good at adapting to situations. I can literally use any loadout, nearly any loadout you ask me to use, and I'll try my heart out to make it work. And this is sometimes where there's some builds where they can work everything everywhere, like Arbalest. You stick on Arbalest, that works on any subclass that you're on. It doesn't matter, Arbalest does the work. Or Controverse Hold Voidwalker, that works everything everywhere. This build where you're not running barrier, it's amazing, but there's some conditions to be met, right? So for example, you need to have a turret up when you're fighting barriers. Now look at that. What happened there to my turret? It disappeared in the wall. I can't believe it, I'm distraught. I'm going to have to go to orbit and start back up. Only joking, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to wait out a nade. But yeah, so that's a condition, is that you need, on Grandmaster difficulty, you need to have your Bleak Watcher nade up. Or if you're on Titan, which Titan can do this as well, at Duskfield with Whisper of Durance, you can melt down any champ with any weapon that you can think of if you've got Whisper of Durance on with Duskfield nades. So Hunters can do it, Titans can do it, Warlocks can do it. The Warlock is very good with the turret, and people are going to lean towards the Warlock Stasis because of the turret. But there are cons to this build and pros, right? It's when there's multiple enemies knocking around, and that's what you'll see coming up. When it's single target, the turret knows what to do. When it's multiple targets, the turret tries to multitask all enemies, and it's a nightmare for when you're trying to take down barrier shields without barrier if there's multiple enemies. This is where you need to start isolating enemies, which is something I do a lot. Even if a run takes longer, I'll do this in Grandmasters. If I can isolate champs from other champs or enemies, I'll do that. That's a tactic I'll do quite a lot, you'll see me. So I'm pretty good at doing that, but sometimes I've got to improvise, right? This is going to be Platinum rank, so I'm not going to skip any champs, of course. It's only arms dealer, so there would be no point to do that. Platinum rank, get your 10 ascendant shards at the very least for next season. I'm not going to be storing shards in the vault, in the postmaster. Sorry, I won't be doing that because it's kind of dumb. I've never done it really. Maybe sometimes store them in exotics. I don't mind doing that, but I don't like keeping stuff in the postmaster. So yeah, just have your 10 ascendant shards. So I guess this is a good week to do that. It's better than next week. Next week's is it Proving Ground? I think it's a harder GM than this, far harder. So if you haven't got your full ascendant shards, it's a good time to do it. Now notice what I've done there. I've skipped the fresher ship. I've skipped all the enemies by beelining it, dunking that orb, and then just beelining it. You will survive, providing that you take the lines that I did, and you just straight in and then round that corner, and you won't die. Although you can die. Just depends if you want to take that risk or not. I've done it both ways, where you clear the ads and when you don't. So it's up to you which way you want to do it. I've done it both ways. I'm skipping these ads here as well. My ammo is decent. Obviously we've got the Cataclysmic, bait and switch, 4 times the charm, good for ammo, amazing for damage, solar burn. So that's what that's on for. The scout rifle is Vouchsafe, void scout, because there's a couple of void shields. And so I'm just covering my shield, my burns for shields. That's all I'm doing there with that. One thing as well, I've got Revitalize and Blast on, right? Now, this was mentioned at the very start of the season by a couple of people on Reddit, but I don't think it caught on. Revitalize and Blast can proc constantly, because when you freeze a champion, it's classing as like sort of stopping them. I might not be doing a good job of explaining this, but you'll see more coming up. So I can back-to-back stun a champ faster to proc more Revitalize and Blasts, as opposed to what it would be like on solar. However, it's far better on solar. I'm not saying it isn't, because obviously you've got Ember of Char and all that stuff, and you can clear out rooms basically. So I'm by no means saying it's better than solar, so don't misquote me. I'm saying you can infinitely stun more Revitalize and Blast back to back. Right? Now I didn't go fulmination as well. I could have done that, but I went bomber instead, just for more nades. Now my timing was off. It was unfortunate, and the turret struggled. Why did it struggle? Because there's multiple targets, and this is what it is. It struggles. This barrier is the most awkward one, in my opinion, in the entire run for this particular setup. Generally, it's the easiest, but not now, because I need to be up close. I need to decide where my cover is and how I go about it. So my idea was to sort of do half HP or a third, then pop super, but the barrier, the turret didn't do a good enough job to freeze that champ whilst I'm in super animation. I risked to get that ammo there because it was just well worth going for it. While my turret was still up, it was freezing enemies around. Provided I've got good movement, I can avoid that sniper, the ships, and get that ammo, and I'm happy. Make sure everything's reloaded, no matter what subclass you're doing for this, because, well, if you're doing linear style runs, linear fusion, then you want to get the an ambush on this tank. You want to get your damage in and out. So I'm going to proc bait and switch, so you notice I've done damage with my other 2 weapons. I know it looks strange that I've done damage with the fusion, but it's just to proc bait and switch. I only spent 4 shots, got 2 back. So that's really good. I've literally just spent 2 shots and the tank is nearly dead. The problem with this, what slows me down, is I can't hit the back legs from here because the tank is dead on, face on to me, so I can't get crits on the back legs. You can later on, the tank will sort of swivel, but if you're impatient a little bit like me, then you'll just end up using your scout. It's got explosive payload on this scout, so it'll do extra damage for me that way. So here's the thing with the unstops, right? So if you can freeze an unstop, it's usually a bad thing. Not this season. Very good, because you can get Revitalize and Blast proccing constantly, right? So look, it just keeps proccing. So it's very good, this. But generally, when you freeze a champ and unstop, it's a bad thing. Your damage is nerfed. You'd be better off not doing that. But this season, no, because of Revitalize and Blast. Look. So you can save on ammo. You don't need to use ammo, and you can just melt them with the scout. Really good. And that's where you get your elemental shards as well. They'll drop as you're freezing the target. They just sort of pop up in 3s. Yeah. So obviously I can't pick it up right now because I'm facing this tank. But generally you see me do that. And that's how I get my Phantom, my energy fire and all that stuff. Obviously this fusion rifle has shield clip, right? Now I'll tell you what I've discovered about Riptide, because I've played with it a lot this season. Up to master content, you don't need to run barrier or stasis. The fusion rifle will melt all barriers, providing that you are at power level for master, for example, right? But if you're 25 power under like a Grandmaster, then the Riptide isn't enough on its own to deal with a barrier. It needs to be accompanied with stasis. Alright? So that's what I'll say to you. You can, it's very difficult though, just because of the turret does so much for you. A Whisper of Durance, Dustfield Grenade will do so much extra freezing. Right, so you can't just rely on this fusion alone. And if we were to talk about other fusions like Deliverance, that's even worse. Actually, it's far worse than this fusion because it's such a slow archetype. It's okay team play if you have 3 Deliverances in a fire team. That's fine. You've got 3 shots apiece, 1 shot apiece. So you're alright, you're going to freeze that barrier and melt them, but when you're on your own, things change. I have tried Deliverance, believe me, and it's nowhere near as good as what Riptide is. Riptide, you do have to be closer to your target, but it's a rapid fire frame, and we know in PvE that rapid fire frames are the best style of fusions, not your high impacts and all that stuff, or your mid-range impacts or whatever they're called. I certainly know Deliverance isn't that good for freezing barriers. It's good on other stuff. It's got demo and I know all that stuff. But as I say, Riptide is a better weapon than it. The Trials one I don't know anything about. I don't know what archetype. I don't play Trials. I've literally got all the weapons I wanted from it, and I haven't played it in a bit. So I'm not sure about the Trials fusion, but I know it's Stasis. So this is a good little position here. What I'm trying to do is 2 things. Take out the remainder of the adds, let them push me because they won't push otherwise, standing behind this little red barricade thing, whilst generating some elemental shards. Because I want those for when we get to the champs. This is really good piece of cover there. We can also then pick up elemental shard and we get our charge of light. So we're good. My plan is obviously, because it's double barrier, is to use a super, but that fails as well. Just getting unlucky with the turret focusing on one barrier as opposed to the other. That's the thing. When you're up against multiple barriers, the turret is nerfed. It just isn't as good. I would prefer right now to have a Dustfield Grenade. The reason why I haven't got a Dustfield Grenade on is because I've got Coldsnap on. I'm using the exotic Gauntlets, the Osmiomancy, right? So that's another downside to these Gauntlets, is that you have to use Coldsnap. And they're alright, Coldsnap Grenade's alright, but a good Dustfield I prefer over these. But we you know, it's all about positioning, I guess. Like, we've got a good position here. We're actually using the champ as cover. The one that was frozen, we're using him as cover, so that if the other champ doesn't freeze, then I'm good. I don't know how long that turret has left in its life cycle, so I'm gonna refresh and wait for my second nade, my next nade. 100% discipline and 100% resilience, of course, as well. Those are the two primary stats that we went for this. Recovery doesn't matter as much these days. I used to say that because I thought with Classy Restoration this season, but obviously I'm not using Classy Restoration, I'm using Stasis. I'm rocking a really low recovery. And I can tell you, I didn't really suffer from it. Recovery is still a prime stat, especially for Warlocks, very good. It's linked to your Healing Rift energy as well, so it is critical, but it didn't. I wasn't suffering that much as what you were used to be, because the resilience is helping out so much more now. So for the tank, we're going to proc bait and switch, same thing. 2 legs, 2 shots each. Then we're going to try and get some stuns on these unstops to try and do some damage, to some chain damage. We'll get a turret up, because the turret, remember, when the champs are frozen, there's more revitalizing blasts going on. So we can get more. You can see how many stuns we're getting there back to back, which is really good. I know, as I said, I do realise the soul is better because of, you know, all the fragments you can put on. But as I said, this is still interesting, none the least, on Stasis. We're standing here as well, so the tank can't one-shot us from here. Tank can't get a shot on me from here, so we can just literally just focus the unstoppables. There's 1 left. They didn't group up as good as I would have liked. Generally, I can clear them all by now, like 3. So didn't have the best RNG on that, but that was okay. We'll get a finish here. I'm very mindful of this tank. Hopefully he doesn't shoot where I was, and he did. He shot that backpack, if you notice. That's what people get killed by in duality. And if you don't know what I mean, just replay back what just happened there. Backpacks get shot like that. That's what's causing people deaths, and they can be laying on the floor. So always be mindful when you're fighting backpack style enemies, because that item will fall on the floor and it's a hazard to you. The Scorn has one as well. They have them torch things. If you explode one of them, they can kill you on GM difficulty. See, when you're playing patrol or low end stuff, you wouldn't notice, but when you're in high end stuff, you will. So now we'll just get some body shot damage on this tank. You can't freeze vehicles. That's another downside to turrets. You can't freeze freshers. I don't know if you can freeze the other enemy vehicles, the ones in Proven Grounds. I don't know if you can freeze them. I imagine you probably could, but I don't know for certain. But I know tanks, freshers, you can't freeze, which is unfortunate. Yeah, we'll just keep using our scout. This takes quite a while. If I was to sort of maneuver myself in a certain position, I'm sure I could probably get a shot on the back legs, but that's fine. We'll get another blind and another turret up. Pop our super, just make use of it, because we don't need it for quite a bit, so I may as well use it now. With these gauntlets as well, you don't have to use it like a Bleak Watcher thing all the time. Sometimes you can just throw a cold snap and you'll nearly get your cold snap back, depending on how many enemies you hit and stuff. So it's good that way. You can kind of spam your cold snap, but that's not relevant to what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to have my turret up more so that it's for barriers and stuff like that. The cold snap will do nothing for you against barriers, so try to not use the cold snap so much. The only reason why you've really got these gauntlets on is because you've got 2. You can convert 2 turret nades as opposed to 1. It's good with Eye of Another World. I think that's the name of the helmet. Providing you've got really good stats, you can get a lot of utility out of that helmet. I also like running high recovery with the Stag, with Bomber. So you keep popping your Rift, and then every time you pop in your Rift, you're getting grenade energy whilst the turret is up. You pretty much have 100% uptime on your grenade with Stag. And I was using that quite a lot a couple of months ago. Stopped using it for a while, but Stag's a really good one. Either of the World's a good one. And obviously these gauntlets I think are the most popular. I don't know if they're the best. I don't know if they are the best turret setup, as I haven't tested recently the other ones that we have. They're probably the easiest ones for people to use because you're flat out just getting 2 nades. That's easier for most people as opposed to having to try and build a perfect setup where you do get like a good uptime on your nade and you're just relying on 1 turret, which you can because we used to all rely on just 1 turret and you get it back. So I'm not convinced if these are the best, but as I say, I'm using them for now. Just take out these turrets, these adds. We'll try and pick up one of the shards. We'll get Font of Wisdom going. And we got that Stasis weapon boost. We do use that at times. Obviously, you've been using me. You've seen me using it when it's been on barriers and stuff. You can even use them on Unstoppables when they're infinitely frozen. You just go up and sort of melt them down with the fusion, even though they're not truly stopped. Because they're frozen, your damage isn't the same. You're still doing massive damage because you've got the charge with Light, Font of Wisdom, all procking together. Plus it's a rapid fire frame, so it's just really destroying champs. My goal right now, because we're up against double barriers coming up, right? But I've learned on how to sort of control them better in this room when you need to isolate. So obviously this wouldn't matter if I used Outbreak Perfected, Arbalist or any barrier weapon. It doesn't matter where I stand. I can really break the shield from anywhere. This build, not so much, because I've told you the inconsistencies with the turret. You need to isolate the enemies away from the champs in order to get this done. So, we need to clear out every legionary in this room. First, before we start dealing with any barriers at all, right? So that's the first thing. So, there's a fresh turrets over here, we'll take those out. We're going to put a nade down round about there because a lot of the legendaries will surround themselves where the barriers are. I know that there's a barrier below and there's one up top. But as I said, my goal is to take these legendaries. So I'll try and freeze them. Or at the very least slow them. And just take out all of them that I can see. I think there's only 2 or 3 left. It's important that we do this because even if you leave one up, because of the Scorched Earth mod, they're just going to throw a nade at your feet while you're trying to deal with the barrier. So it's something that you don't need or want, right? So it's just a case of just take out legendaries. That's your first step. I think that's the last one. There's one orange bar at the back of the map, which doesn't seem to push. We're going to use the ship. I'm not going to kill the barrier from over here because I've actually tested this. If you stand on the bridge, one of the barriers will teleport up top. Every time. So now, we've got enemies teleporting, but we actually know how to trigger it. Oh, this is one instance of it anyways. Which actually, enemies don't teleport as much. They still do, but not as much. Like, look at this. I know 100%. I'm even going to put a turret nade or charge one. Look. So we know he's always going to port there. Isn't it magical? He's frozen. So now what we've done with this though is we have isolated both champs away from each other, which is great. Because as I said, the turret would struggle. But it won't now because there's only one target. So what the turret does, if you actually pay attention to it, is it stops shooting when an enemy is frozen. If all enemies next to the turret are frozen, the turret doesn't spam. It just stops. It's autonomous and then starts to fire again once an enemy becomes unfrozen. But say you've got 2 enemies, one behind, one in front. The turret can't do it all, right? You can't rely on everything. So that's why you have to do it this way. But it is fun when you get to play this build. It really is. Okay, we use a bit of heavy here because we've got heavy on the floor. We've got plenty of ammo. We were actually blessed on this run. I've done a couple of runs with this just to see what it was like. And I was pretty consistent with the solos, just getting them done, farming shards. So it was pretty decent. But this run in particular was okay because I was getting the ammo drops. There's some runs where I really wasn't getting much ammo at all. And that really can impact your run. Now just look at that. What that's just done there, that fusion. Bear in mind, we're a bit away from the enemies. 2 shots, 1 shot to slow, second shot to freeze, right? That's how Chill Clip works. It's frozen all those enemies, so then I'm doing splash damage to them when I'm doing, when I'm doing damage when they're frozen. Well, if one of them dies, you'll do splash damage. So it's a very good weapon for actually staying alive. This class is actually really good overall, because you have multiple ways of freezing targets. It's just fun. Notice we haven't got charge of, we haven't got charge of light or anything like that, but we're going to get it. I'm going to show you how to get it. Very easy to get. So with the boss, we're not cheesing. We can't. I don't know if you can penetrate the bubble with turret. I doubt it. I very much doubt it. And if you can, it would take years and years to probably kill this boss in the bubble. So we're not obviously going to exploit this. We're just going to do it properly, right? So, not that there's a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people doing the cheese, because I do the cheese. I like the cheese because I like to make a video about it, you see. As do other people, and they like to watch it. So I have nothing against people exploiting it neither. You're talking to somebody who's exploited multiple Nightfalls. So I know I'm fine with it. I'm happy with it if somebody does that. But as I said, I'm doing what I'm doing to showcase my setup. Right? Because then there's more opportunity for me to show you how the super is, the nade is, what's Riptide like for damage. So even though I'm just doing a solo video, people don't realise I'm not just doing a solo video. I'm bringing up points while doing it, as opposed to just sitting in orbit and telling you something, or in the tower like people do. Those are the videos that really get on my nerves. I don't care about people cheesing stuff and all that. What gets on my nerves is people making these quick 50-second videos and gaining huge amounts of subscribers off it. It really bothers me, because it's like they're doing nothing and you're paying somebody to sit at home. I know you're not paying them directly, but you're watching their stuff. They're sitting at home, they're doing poor videos, little to no effort. I could do the same thing. I could knock out 10 a day if you wanted me to. Could do, but I don't choose to do that because I feel as though some of them are quite cheap. I only do them sometimes when something's to be like... The last time I done one was when Zer sold a God Roll bottom dollar. And it was a huge thing at the time because it was probably the best void hand cannon in the game. Right? Because Gambit was a nightmare to farm stuff. It's not so much now. You can focus engrams. So that's the only really times I really do it, is if I feel as though it's really important. We're going to proc bait and switch. I've missed one of my crits. So I've missed 2 now. So that's a bit of a nightmare. We'll have to get a reload fast. I want to get half HP off this boss. Right? Which we've still got time to do it. Look at the turret. It's still freezing. We've got plenty of crits in there, apart from the 2 that we missed. And the boss is half HP, so I'm super happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is wait a little bit. I'm going to wait. There's a turret that I left up. That's my bad. Boss will almost certainly shield because we've done so much damage. He's going to shield all day. He shields at a 3rd HP if you didn't know. This is time for super, right? So this is showing you just how good the super is for survivability, stuff like that. I've got a turret nade up and I'm using the super. Right, and that's pretty much everything cleared. The solar shield's still up, but that's fine. Thresher's above me. Now I have to be mobile, because the Thresher can actually kill you fast with solar acute burn. But yeah, that's pretty much all those enemies dealt with. Now it's just us and the Thresher. Thresher's not too bad to deal with. I've actually found a couple of places to stand so that you can just literally just continually scout the Thresher down. Stand in front of these barricades, the blasts will just hit that barricade. Yeah, and you can just do damage without having to move about, run about and stuff. It's actually nice. So the next phase that we're approaching, well, we'll go and pick up the relic. Obviously that'll spawn in the next set of ads. It'll be an initial set of ads, an orange bar, two or three legionaries, and then a centurion back of him where you actually dunk the orb. But I don't recommend you need to be juggling this orb. You are on a solo Grandmaster, you know, doesn't really matter. Just drop that orb, it'll just respawn where you picked it up. I'm going to lead with a blind, with a turret nade. Try and blind them, sort of get the jump on them. One of them jumped over. That was fine though. It's also helped me as well for the Font of Wisdom, so that we can get our super for later, because we're gonna want another super. We'll put another turret up. Let the turret do a bit of its work. That's crazy what just happened there. It actually looked like when I broke the Solar's shield, it melted the fact that he was frozen. But that's not what happened. It's just the fact the turret focused on another enemy. Just kind of funny to watch. It's kind of funny as well when you play Stasis, just how it adds their mid-attack and they freeze. They've done a good job with Stasis. PvE-wise, it's still a strong thing. It doesn't need any seasonal mods to be strong. It's balanced decent. I feel as though the super could do a bit of work, the Warlock one. I haven't played much Revenant. Revenant's good though. Like, don't sleep on Revenant, it's also good. Behemoth's really good as well. So yeah, Stasis I feel as though still strong. People do ask me from time to time about Stasis, because there are still people who still sort of love the whole Stasis thing. I do like it, but I still think maybe Void is probably my favourite subclass overall. Sentinel, just because how good Bastion is. It's very strong. I know Solar Hammers is strong. I know that, and I do like Solar Hammers. But I think I'm still a bit of a lover of the Sentinel and Void Walker as well. Even Teva, I like Teva. So what I'm doing here is I'm pitching up at a location so where the boss can't really hit me. But all the adds, look at this synergy with the fusion and then the turret, just taking them all out. Just means we can control all the adds. Now we'll take out some of the turrets. We'll just take one of them out. I'll leave one alive. I don't know how he sniped me there. He must have just sort of caught a glimpse of me. If there's any dogs alive we need to take out before we deal with phase 2. The boss, right, obviously don't do any more damage to the boss until you're ready. Because you need to get him to a 3rd HP minimum. If you don't do that and you initiate the next phase, the boss will stand on his podium and snipe you to death. Whilst adds start. So yet again, isolate the DPS phase from the add phase by doing so much damage that by the time you're done with damage, the boss is not going to be... He will shield up, which is what you want, and then it's just you and the adds. And that's ultimately what you want. And the more work you do now, the less work you do later, damage-wise. And on our final phase, it is a little bit sketchy with how the boss works. So, little tips like this go a long way. So, I've froze on purpose with the turret to pick up an elemental shard. That's all I've done that for. Right, I'm checking the boss HP. He's around half HP, which is exactly where I want him. I'm going to lead with a turret to give me more time on damage, because this will actually freeze the boss, giving me more time for damage. So we'll activate bait and switch. So look at this with the turret doing exceptional work. Then with the bait and switch, the boss is like way below a 3rd, so I'm really happy with that damage. It just means on the final phase there's less to do. Again, what we want to do here is try and let the adds group up a little bit. Try and deal with this solar shield. He's frozen. We'll pop a super, that's what we want this for. Because this phase can be dangerous without the super, because there's a fresher that spawns in, yeah? And you're dealing with freshers and then adds at the same time. That's where you're going to have to really slay out. But when you've got a super, things are a little bit different, a little bit easier. That's why we've got like Font of Wisdom on, and we've dedicated a whole build. I generally don't go too in-depth with builds. I'm not somebody that's easy pleased with builds. I'm not somebody that gets overwhelmed with them and to the point where like it's amazing. This is the only thing that I like in the game and stuff like that. I'm all about weapons, me, less about builds. I do like a good build that I know that's true and works. But if it's a build that's just not really a build, then I'm less enthusiastic about it, shall we say. I'm more, because I know the mechanics of solo play and what's required, and I know it's more knowledge as opposed to builds in a lot of things. But here's the thing: if somebody is knowledgeable, they're probably knowledgeable about builds as well. So they go hand in hand. But then there's the people that are not very good at solo play, haven't really done much solo play, but they know everything about the build when you talk to them. Those types of people. And those types of people are the people that sort of do get it on my nerves a little bit, because they'll say, well, use this, and then you say, well, what have you done? Well, I haven't done anything. I'm just telling you information about it. Right, well, what you've told me is wrong. Or you're not quite right. Things on paper are different to things in execution, right? And we, you know, things are different. It just depends, right, on how things work. We've got these next wave of ads. They've spread out a little bit, which wasn't ideal, but we're still getting their freezes. Fusion's doing good work, just taking out all the enemies. Deal with the solar shield. I probably didn't need to do this, but I actually done this just to get Charge of Light back, because I'm a hoarder of trying to get it back on, because I've obviously lost it. So we've got our shard. We'll get plenty of turrets back anyways, it's fine. And then we'll go for the orb. Obviously we'll go for the orb, dunk it, then it's the final phase. So if I had a weapon that was non-crit like Xeno or a Witherhoard, I would actually play my ground a little bit and fight this boss a bit more aggressive. But because I'm using like a linear, it's really good, the linear, obviously, don't get me wrong, but on the final phase not so much. The boss rushes you like a madman, and you haven't got much time to... I would like to see someone do like 6 crits on this phase. Nearly impossible, because the boss pushes so hard. I mean, how is he doing so much damage to me? If you saw that, how is he doing that damage from that sort of range? I mean, look, we'll try and get some crits, but by the time he closes the gap so fast. So what we'll do, it's actually snipers, so I'm just going to take them all out and show you the utility of the weapon. We did get sniped there, and we're getting hit here. This is where you can see the bad recovery there. So if you see that play, generally that wouldn't be as bad, because my recovery is such a bad stat on this particular build. I suffered there. So sometimes you do suffer with low recovery in low recovery in GMs, but just depends on what GM you're playing really, and what's going on. That's the final sniper taken out. So now it's just us and the boss. That's what I wanted. So I can free roam around the map for the most part. We can get a bit of freeze action going. Bait the boss out for a stomp. That won't do damage to you because you're on a different level. So if a boss does a stomp mechanic and you're below him, the stomp is only considered for the floor that he's on, if you know what I mean. You can't get stomped if you're lower than that. We're going to try to get some fusion going, because the boss is literally dead. We've got a super coming up. The boss is pushing hard, slowing him, though, the slow effect if you saw. But that was a solo Grandmaster on that, with Riptide and Stasis. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.